topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Who is January Jones? She is not a young, beautiful, talented actress on Mad Men. She is not an older, gorgeous, exotic dancer from the Johnny Carson Show. She is an author, and she wrote Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. She is a reality TV golf personality with World High Stakes Golf televised on HDNet. She is a humorist and winologist expert. She is your featured host today on January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and listen to Ms. Jones with her eclectic roster of guests as you learn life's lessons. These stories plus sharing equals success. Welcome, and remember, beware, because you are entering the no whining world of January Jones.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm January Jones, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast today. I've been on hiatus, so it's lovely to be back live and to be with you again. By the way, since I saw you last, we've renamed our podcast. It now is January Jones Sharing Senior Success. Since I last saw you, I turned 80 years old. Yeah, hard to believe, especially for me. And now I want to share other senior stories with you. However, never fear, I'm still the glitter granny, and today I'm wearing my black Rat Pack hat. For my listeners, let me ask you a question. Do you remember much about the famous Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra, the original saloon singer, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr.? Tell me, did you ever get to see them perform in Vegas? I did, and wow, what an experience. I'll never forget it. Why do you think they were so popular? Well, of course, they were so much fun and they were so irreverent. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be an entertainer, to be a saloon singer? Can you imagine what it would be like to be able to perform live in front of audiences? Tell me, do you wish you could meet someone who can tell you how he does it? Now would you like to meet a man who is doing it in front of live audiences right now? If you can answer yes or maybe to any of these questions, then you are in the right place. And I'd like to welcome you to January Jones Sharing Senior Success. So now rest, relax, go get some wine, go get some cheese and crackers so you can join me in the no wine zone. Now let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. He has been performing for 4 decades as a vocal impersonator and comic impressionist. In the 1980s, he performed at comic clubs in Manhattan, such as the Comic Strip and the Improv. In 1995, he won first place as Rochester's Funniest Big Shot in Rochester, New York. In 2003, our guest began singing with Nick's Entertainment. Shortly thereafter, he formed Frank's Rat Pack. He performs in New York and as far south as Sarasota, Florida, where he will be performing soon, Sunday, October 22nd, at the Florida Studio Theater. He performs with a big band, and it is my pleasure to welcome to the podcast today, Frank Torchio. Hi, Frank.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me on your program.
Oh, wonderful to have you. And we have seen you perform, and I'm so excited to help you promote your upcoming show. Let me ask you, how did this all begin? Uh, who were your inspirations when you were young? Where were you born, and where did you grow up? Rochester?
Yes, I did grow up in Rochester, and the uh, the things that I watched when I was young, I loved impressionists. So the Rich Little and David Fry and Frank Gorshin. I just loved watching these guys perform in the different voices and take on the characteristics, the mannerisms of the people that they were doing impressions of.
Hmm.
I think the first time that I ever got a laugh was when I was very young, and my father used to watch the old Jackie Gleason show, not the Honeymooners, but the variety show that he did in the 60s.
Hmm.
And at the end of every Jackie Gleason show, there was a segment, Joe the Bartender.
Yeah.
And you remember this? And
Oh,
in
yeah.
Joe the Bartender, the character that would come in was a character played by Frank Fontaine. He would play a character named Crazy Guggenheim.
Yes.
And he would walk in, he'd say, "Oh, Joe, oh, Mr. Dennehy." And I did that for my dad, and he cracked up. I said, that was my first impression.
Oh my God. How old were you when you did that?
I was probably, 8 years old. So that's how it kind of got started.
Okay, so were you like a class clown, I would wonder?
So in high school, I did get voted the class comedian. I was really starting, particularly in the last few years of high school. I started to do the rounds in the classrooms. The teachers would ask me to come in and do my impressions, do my little act for them, and it was, in fact, at one time, I was in math class and somebody brought a slip of paper saying that I had a problem with my credits to graduate. Would I please come to the teachers' lounge? Like, oh, so I went to the teachers' lounge, and there was all the teachers sitting there saying, "Okay, do your act. We want to see it." So,
Well, you couldn't have had a better audience. That's wonderful. Did you perform at other places? How old were you when you first stepped on a stage to perform in front of a live audience?
yeah, so that would have been down in New York City. So I was 21 years old,
Uh-huh.
and I was at the place called the Comic Strip in New York. One of
famous
the comedy. I think that's gone now, but it was a pretty big comics
Venue.
venue. We had a lot of fun. So I started to do impressions on stage there. Yeah.
Okay. And so then, of course, you did Crazy Guggenheim. And who were some of your other first impressions as a beginner? How was that?
Well, there was one bit that I did back then, and it was something that I saw Kevin Pollak do that broke me up. And it was a takeoff on the third Star Trek movie was called Search for Spock.
Okay.
And in that movie, the antagonist in that movie was played by Christopher Lloyd, who you may remember from
Back to the
Back
Future.
to the Future, and he also was a character on Taxi.
Okay, yeah.
He played Reverend Jim on Taxi. So the bit goes like this: it says, "Well, Christopher Lloyd, great actor, but nobody knew that it was Christopher Lloyd for the first half of the movie because he had this tremendous makeup playing a Klingon. And he only spoke Klingonese for the first half of the movie." So it wasn't until the second half of the movie where he's speaking to Captain Kirk, and that's when you realize that it was Reverend Jim, because he said, "Captain Kirk, will you give me the Genesis device?" "Oh, okay, doc." So that was the kind of stuff that I was doing in New York City.
Okay, so that's what you started off as, truly as an impressionist. How did your family feel about this? Did they encourage you or discourage you?
I wouldn't say they encouraged me, but actually what happened was when I was down in New York City, it was at the time when Jerry Seinfeld was starting, and Stephen Wright I was watching these guys and saying, these guys are hysterical. I think I better go back to graduate school and get a degree. So I left New York City and got an MBA.
Oh,
and kind of stopped doing impressions for 20 years.
Wow, over 20 years. Okay, so you got serious, and you went out and
got a degree, got a job, got married, got kids, and then the turning point was about in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And how this came about was karaoke was becoming the trend back in the 90s, and I was at a karaoke bar, and one of my friends kind of egging me on to get up and do a song, and I got up and did a Dean Martin song, and I did it in a Dean Martin voice. And immediately somebody came up to me with a business card saying, "Hey, I would like you to join our group. We do." It was Nick and the Nice Guys, what you mentioned earlier.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of started me off, and I said, "Oh, so I started to do a lot more singing impressions. In addition to Dean Martin, I did Jimmy Durante and Louis Armstrong, some Bobby Darin, Louie Prima, and sort of focused on reprising the nightclub acts from the great performers of the 50s and 60s."
Yeah.
And that's kind of jump started me to where I am today.
Wow. And so then you took a real break, and you were a real responsible grown-up adult, which probably pleased your mother.
It did. Yeah.
But then in the background, you were still a performer, and you were getting up your courage. Right now we're going to take a short break. So if you are a whiner, or if you know someone who is a whiner, this commercial is for you.
Lately, there's a whining epidemic in our world. People are even whining about whining. Are you sick and tired of listening to everyone whining all the time? So was January Jones, the author of Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. Ms. Jones based her book on a survey of the top 10 things that people whine about at all ages and all stages of life. January is a success coach that can tell you how to help others. When you buy Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, you'll find out what people whine about and how to stop them from whining. This is the perfect gift book to give or get for any occasion. Thou Shalt Not Whine was voted the best gift to be given anonymously for those special people in your life. Ms. Jones is an internationally known author in the style of Irma Bombeck, specializing in housewife humor, with her book being published in Korea and China. You can find Thou Shalt Not Whine at Amazon.com.
Also, Thou Shalt Not Whine is available at audible.com just recently. Frank, before we go on with our podcast, could you share with our listeners your website information and give us another little promo for the show you're doing in Sarasota?
Sure. So the website is Frank's Rat Pack, all one word, .com. And on that website, you'll see the video that we prepared, a promotional video, as well as some audio singles that we have on tape, and some pictures that we've been taken over the years and included in there. Mm-hmm. And you'll also see a connection to franktorchio.com, the Facebook page that we have.
Oh,
so on the Facebook page, I try to keep up to date with the upcoming performances. As you mentioned earlier, we have one of those coming up at the Florida Studio Theater on October 22nd. And this has been the transition that I've made in the last few years. Is I would started out my career singing with backing tracks, playing backing tracks. And a few years ago, I talked to a good friend of mine who writes musical charts, and he prepared these charts for a big 12-piece band that we now use, and which will be the the show at the Florida Studio Theater, we'll have a big 12-piece band where we play again the the songs, and I sing in the styles of Sinatra and Dean Martin and Louie Prima, Louis Armstrong, Bobby Darin, Nat King Cole. So try to bring back a little bit of the 50s and 60s, the stuff that you'd see on the Ed Sullivan Show, or if you were lucky enough, like you were, to have actually gone to Vegas to see these folks perform. And in addition to the singing impressions, I do some, comedic impressions. George Burns and Rodney Dangerfield. At Christmas time, we have a Christmas show that I will recite "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" in various voices. Ed Sullivan and Clark Gable and Cooper, Jimmy Stewart. And so we have a lot of fun in these shows. So it's not just singing. There's a fair amount of comedic impressions that I do. Kind of the it's kind of modeled after a performer that used to play in Vegas, and maybe you might remember his name. His name was Danny Gans. He was extraordinarily popular in Vegas. He was Entertainer of the Year in Las Vegas for I don't know how many years running.
Okay.
He passed away maybe 10, 12 years ago. But I saw him in Vegas in the 90s, and I just loved his act. So much of what I do is sort of modeled after Danny Gans, how he performed in Vegas.
Yeah. So you do comedy impressions, and your show is incredibly entertaining.
Thank you.
You perform, and which is why I wanted to invite you on the podcast and share you with other seniors. Let me ask you about the Rat Pack. Did you have to get permission to use that name, or was it just?
No, it's not. It's not copyrighted or anything. So there was no legal restriction for using it.
Okay.
You'll see that. I mean, if you got online, you'll see that in a dozen different acts will make use of the Rat Pack. But I thought since my name was Frank, I thought Frank's Rat Pack was kind of cute, so I kept that on the website. Although now I just perform as Frank Torchio. I don't, the website says Frank's Rat Pack, but I don't really use that moniker.
Well, I like though that you use it, because it kind of gives people an inclination of what the show's going to be about, and a lot, especially people our age. My husband just adores you and loves everything you do. Now, when you started out, you were working as a real person with a MBA, a degree and everything. How did you phase into, did you just do entertaining part-time, or how did you do that?
Yeah. I started out, in addition to working at Nick and the Nice Guys in Rochester, I started to make my little visits to senior living facilities, people that, of the age that really appreciate and want to hear some of the old. And I realized then, that I did not want to update my act. I did not want to do contemporary impressions like you would see on Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
I really felt like I want to gear this towards the seniors, to the people who remember watching this, like I said, on the Ed Sullivan Show or some of the variety shows back in the 60s. I felt like I want to stay in that era, and that's what I've zeroed the act in on, is those performers that performed back then, that I think will bring up a lot of good memories for people that are our age.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I'm trying to gear this podcast to senior success, because there are so many senior success stories out there. And it seems that seniors now, they're just not content to just retire and do nothing. Their seniors are just all of a sudden trying different things, such as you, and have becoming quite successful at basically brand new careers. It's a very exciting thing to do, isn't it?
It has been for me. I've just enjoyed it thoroughly. And in fact, I've got a show a week from Friday here in Rochester. I kind of keep bouncing back and forth on the East Coast from Florida up to New York State, and I just love it. It's just so much fun, and I love the reaction of the audience. It's almost like these the folks that come to the show saying, "We're not forgotten. This is the kind of entertainment we remember." And when they found somebody who was providing that entertainment to them, and it's just great feeling.
Yeah, it sounds like you're actually enjoying it now more than ever. And also, did you get ever any feedback from, or did you meet any of these people that you do impressions of? And did you get any kind of feedback?
I have not, and in fact, virtually everybody that I do impressions of has passed away. Tony Bennett, I think the last one. And I did see Tony Bennett a number of times over the years. Just most recently, he did a show maybe 4 years ago at Sarasota that I attended. That's another impression I do is Tony Bennett. So it's.
I know, and we have, it's just that we have a thing on our player piano. We play it practically once or twice, 3 times a week. We love him, and it was interesting. Even though he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, apparently he was able to remember the songs, and he did some of his most amazing work with Lady Gaga recently. And some of the things he's done are just timeless. And he's, what was he, 96 or something when he passed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What an amazing career. And what a great example. What a gentleman. Just a classic voice. You can, there are certain ones when you hear their voice, you just know who they are. And now, how long does it take?
Isn't that the thing? Is that with many of these guys, they have such distinct voices that you know exactly who it is when you hear the song, and that's what I find so intriguing. Whether it's Sammy Davis or Sinatra or Dean Martin or Bobby Darin, Tony Bennett, it's just, and of course Jimmy Durante is very. But right away who it is, and I think that's really the key, is that they had such interesting voices and phrasing that it just
they were so unique, and that made it so special, and they just put their brand out there, and we listen on the radio and we know immediately who they are, and how long does it take to learn how to sound like someone? How long does it take for you to work on getting an impression just right?
It takes a while. What I do is I download songs to my iPhone and then play it in my car all the time. So if I'm taking a trip someplace, I'll just play these songs over and over again and listen really closely to the phrasing, to the way that they enunciate certain words, how they emphasize certain words in the song, and I try to make sure that when I'm doing those songs, that I replicate as closely as I can how they performed it, how they phrased and enunciated, so that somebody's listening. What I'm hoping is they're saying, "Geez, that sounds exactly like the album I just heard." It's the same arrangement, and I'm trying to make this the exact same way. So I don't try to sing like Frank Torchio. I try to sing the way that these guys, sang in their day.
Yeah, and I love the part in the show where you have the audience, as you do a song, we're guessing who it is.
Oh yeah.
And I actually did guess Louie Prima.
Did you?
Yeah. I was the winner in my little area.
I find that song, the song that the Louie Prima song that I do is Just a Gigolo, and that seems to be a big crowd pleaser. People sing along with it, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, your shows are just really interactive. Let's put it that way. Right now, we're going to take a break. And over 60 years ago, something happened in this country that was very traumatic. And people are still asking 60 years later, who killed Kennedy? And who do you think had the money, the motive, and the means?
Let me ask you a question. Are you still wondering who killed Kennedy? Over 50 years later, the assassination is still a mystery. It is unfinished business for our country. Now, get ready for a theory that you've never heard before, but will make more sense than any other conspiracy theory that you've ever heard in the past. January Jones speaks the unspeakable in her book, Jackie, Ari, and Jack, The Tragic Love Triangle, connecting Jackie and Aristotle Onassis romantically prior to JFK's assassination. Did you know that Ari was Jackie's guest in the White House during the JFK funeral? He was the only non-family member who was invited by Jackie to stay there during the funeral. Aristotle Onassis was one of the wealthiest men in the world, with the means, the motive, and the money to order an assassination that was the perfect crime of the last century. Ari needed class, and Jackie needed cash. They were perfect for each other. Now, what is Camelot? It is but another tragic love triangle. Jackie, Ari, and Jack is available at JanuaryJones.com, Amazon.com, and audiobooks.com, read by Ms. Jones.
Welcome back. I'm having so much fun sharing a senior success, Frank Torchio. Frank, what's it like for you to sing with a 12-piece orchestra? That must be just so intimidating.
Thrilling, absolutely thrilling. It has taken it a step above what I was doing before with backing tracks, and a live big orchestra is just so much fun. And I'm lucky that my musical director, Russell Scarbrough, he has so many connections around the country that wherever we go, he's able to pull together 12 remarkable musicians that because these charts, as you probably know, these charts, particularly the Sinatra charts, are not easy charts. They're difficult charts for musicians to read. So it takes a really skilled musician to be able to play these things together and with only one rehearsal. So it really is so much fun, and there are times when I almost forget my place because I'm listening to the band during the break in the vocals.
Yeah.
I got to come in. This is
well, that's another extension of senior success, because you're actually sharing with us the story about a lot of musicians who are like all through the country.
Yep.
Probably they're all retired. And I bet when they get that phone call from Russell to come and do a gig, I bet they're thrilled to do it, aren't they?
So far, I mean, whoever he's contacted, they enjoy the show. They enjoy doing it. It's and I think they have fun watching me do these impressions, because, as you said, most of them are older, most of them are seniors, and they know these the celebrities that I'm doing, and they get a kick out of it as well.
Are there many young musicians who can actually join in and play this type of music? Because it seems like it's just something from our past that we treasure. Are new people coming on board and enjoying it too?
I think so. It's funny, not just musicians, but even in my show, audiences in my shows, you'll find some young people who really are there because they listen to this music all the time and they want to hear it. I tell the story that a couple of times we've gotten couples that are getting married and they want us to perform at their wedding. I tell them, I said, I'm happy to do this, but understand that, this is what we play. This is our genre, this kind of music. And they go, oh, no, that's great. That's great. And, I said, yeah, you're awfully young, but because, we love this. Our friends love this music. So invariably we get there and we'll play during their wedding, and the kids are having a ball. And the comical part is somewhere during the evening, the older people in their 50s will come up to me and say, hey, do you play any 70s rock? Like, no.
No.
So there are young people out there, and as well as musicians, some very accomplished musicians that are young that do occasionally fill in on the band. I think this music it just survives the test of time, and I think accomplished musicians appreciate this music as much as the folks our age.
Yeah, and I think that we saw that happen with Tony Bennett teaming up with Lady Gaga, and that was just an incredible blending. And then Frank Sinatra and Barbra Streisand, they all did a group of duets.
Yes.
Other singers, and they actually did it with younger singers, and Michael Bublé, and they brought that whole group back together and shared their music with them, and that was very inspiring.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that a lot of the older performers, rock and roll singers, like I'm trying to think of who Rod Stewart, for example, has put out an album of American standards, and two of my favorite albums are the Linda Ronstadt sang with Nelson Riddle arrangements.
Oh yeah,
fabulous albums, and she has she had a tremendous voice. Yeah. So yeah, you do see this crossover occur, particularly with older performers that want to make their mark. Some of these standards.
Yeah, I can remember many years ago when Frank Sinatra invited Elvis Presley on his show. And of course, that was just so exciting for young people. And the other entertainer we really enjoyed was Dean Martin, his Dean Martin Hour show. He was a gifted, aside from, everyone thought of him with Jerry Lewis, but just on his own, he was a brilliant comedian himself.
He was tremendous timing. I've listened to a number of recordings of his Las Vegas act. And it's somewhat dated, but he is hysterical. I mean, he plays that drunk and so.
You're so spot on with these impressions. Do you research? Do you go to YouTube? How do you watch them? How do you get to see how you're going to act like them? How do you imitate them?
Yeah, I do. I watch a lot of their videos of their performances, try to mimic, much of their hand gestures, the way that they stand. Sinatra had a certain way where he would, sing with his hand, and tilt his head a little bit. And so I try to emulate their physical characteristics as well as their voices. And I think it kind of helps the atmosphere of the show to kind of get into character, so to speak.
Oh yeah, and you do it wonderfully. You had me sold. I loved it. Okay, you do quite a few shows. Are you traveling a lot now, or just occasionally?
Occasionally, we try to book venues around pretty much the East Coast. So we'll do a few once a month.
So now, when we've got other seniors who are going to be hopefully watching us on this show, what advice do you have for seniors who would like to try to do something like what you're doing? How do you recommend? Do you recommend they do open mic, or what would you recommend if we've got some talent out there wanting to get started again?
I think one of the fun things to do is to go to some of these karaoke bars
Okay.
If you really enjoy singing, because I've seen some talented people, take the mic at these karaoke bars.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be a little discerning because, if the karaoke bar is kind of geared towards the younger people,
Yeah,
it might not be as fun. But and I'm a little surprised that there's not more, particularly in Florida, not more karaoke for
seniors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, because there is a large senior community, as we both know. We're both here in Sarasota. Yeah, we've gone to several places that have regular karaoke. And of course, my husband always puts his name down and sings. He usually sings one of Dean Martin's songs. Everybody knows somebody. And he has his songs. And there's other people that do it too. And it's a very brave thing to do. And you have to have a pretty good voice. Also, there's all kinds of improv, stand-up
There is.
opportunities.
Yeah, the Florida Studio Theater has an improv night. I forget what night it is, but
Yeah, it's on Saturdays.
Saturdays.
Yeah. And that's for the really brave people if they're ready to go open mic. Did you ever do open mic when you started out?
I never. Well, I did, impressions, but but that's about as much as I've done. I think. I always think. I forget what that. Who was that famous actor who was on his deathbed, and he said, "Oh, you're scared of dying." He said, "Dying is easy. Comedy is hard."
Yeah. That's perfect. We're going to take a break now. Have you ever met someone who was unforgettable? Well, I'd like to share some of my most unforgettable guests with you. Have you ever met someone who was unforgettable? Someone who has touched your heart and soul? People who have faced difficult problems? People who have struggled to find solutions? People who fearlessly shared their stories? People who have not only informed you, but inspired you. People who have priceless personalities. I have been fortunate to host an internet radio talk show called January Jones Sharing Success Stories, and it has been my privilege to interview hundreds of guests. My guests have shared their stories, their struggles, their secrets, and their successes in their own words. In this book, we're talking about people dealing with problems such as incest, molestation, runaway kids, child abuse, drug abuse, polygamy, unemployment, scandal, and starting over. Then there are my guests dealing with difficult physical struggles such as blindness, cancer, and birth defects that are beyond traumatic. My guests have all been exciting, eclectic, and energizing. They have amazed, amused, and even astonished me. I have adored getting to meet them, and I adore sharing them with you.
Attention all listeners. Priceless Personalities, Success Stories Shared by January Jones, Volume 2 is now available at Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle editions. You'll be able to meet 10 amazing people who will be sharing their own personal stories with all their struggles, successes, and solutions, sprinkled with lots of humor and hope. Priceless Personalities features a teenager who becomes one of the famous Supremes from Motown, a nurse who as a humorist helps people to heal, an inspiring laughter yoga instructor, a mother dealing with the loss of a child, an incredible motivational speaker, a woman who married 5 times, a gifted paranormal nurse, a wise economist, a funny female humorist, along with an older man sharing his sweet childhood in the Deep South. January's guests are all amazing and amusing. You will never forget meeting them. Go to Amazon.com for your own priceless experience.
All of my books are also available at audible.com. Okay, Frank, I'm back with my favorite senior saloon singer. Frank, when you look back, do you have any regrets or things that you wish you could do over?
I wish, yes. The biggest one is that my father, he died in 1995, died young, and he loved Dean Martin. He loved Sinatra, and he never got a chance to see me do this. He got sick early on, so never saw. And it was partly my interest in this music was right after he died, and I got sort of tired of rock and roll and started to listening to the songs that he listened to, and started to really appreciate the music. So I think in large part what I do now is due to him, but I wish I had started earlier. I wish that he had seen one of my performances.
Yeah,
he loved it. He just would have loved it.
Did your mom get to see you perform?
She died in 95 as well. They both, within 3 months of each other. So no, she did.
Yeah. Well, I bet the rest of your family is pretty proud of you.
Very much, yes.
Okay, now this is a question before we sign up. I always ask all my guests, if you could have dinner with anyone besides me, living or dead, who would you invite to dinner?
Jimmy Stewart.
Okay.
In fact, I've had dreams where I've had lunch with Jimmy Stewart.
Wow.
I swear to God.
Oh my
God! That immediately comes to my mind. That's why I'd love to have lunch with Jimmy Stewart.
Okay, so when you're this lunch, if you were having this dream, do you talk Jimmy Stewart talk, or are you?
No, I don't do Jimmy Stewart to Jimmy Stewart, but I ask him about the movies he was in, the actors that he worked with, the directors that directed him in movies like Hitchcock. Yeah, I didn't, in my dream, I did not feel that it was appropriate to do Jimmy Stewart in front of him, Jimmy Stewart.
Okay. Just chance, could you do a little Jimmy Stewart for me right now?
Sure. So here's a bit that I do. I start out with, you all know that Jimmy Stewart was in a movie with Doris Day called The Man Who Knew Too Much. Yes. And in that movie, you'll remember that Doris Day sang this song, her signature song, Que Sera, Sera. She sang it probably 4 times during the movie. Mm-hmm. What people don't know is that Hitchcock actually wanted Jimmy Stewart to sing this in the movie, but he cut it out. And if he had kept it in, it would have gone something like this. When I was just a little boy, why I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? Well, now this was her wise reply. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. Well, the future is not ours to see. Que sera, sera.
That my husband's going to love this show because that's one of his very favorite songs. So that's a difficult one. Is Cary Grant like the easiest one?
Cary Grant's not too hard. You can. Yes, hello, darling. It's good to see you. Yes, you look marvelous tonight. I must say.
Yeah, I think all impressionists usually start out with him.
Yeah. Cary Grant, Jimmy Cagney.
Who was the hardest one for you to do? Who took the longest time and the most difficult to get just right?
George Burns was difficult. That took a while to do.
Really? With the cigar and.
Yeah, with the cigar and the look.
Yeah.
That was one of the more difficult ones for me to get. A very gravelly voice. Yeah.
Well, it probably would have helped to have had a Gracie with you.
Yes, it would. Yeah. All George would say is hello, Gracie, and she would take over.
Yeah. She was always pretty much the act. Now, do you ever have other people in your act? Do you ever invite other singers to join you on stage?
Occasionally. Usually, I'm not doing a Christmas show in Sarasota this year, but I am doing a Christmas show.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of ladies that I will call upon, because we'll do some duets on Christmas songs, like we'll do "Baby It's Cold Outside," great Christmas duet song.
Yeah.
And I'll ask one of the ladies to sing a Judy Garland a Christmas song, and so I'll do that occasionally.
Okay. Well, you have to promise me that next year you'll do a Christmas song here. And this is all wonderful stuff that's going to be happening in Sarasota at Florida Studio Theater. We are subscribers and we wouldn't miss it. It'll be Sunday, October 22nd at 7 o'clock.
Right.
And if you're in the area, the phone number for there is 941-366-9000, and you can call and reserve your seats. We'll be there. We'll be celebrating actually our 53rd wedding anniversary.
Oh.
So I expect to have an anniversary song.
Can do.
I hope everyone listening in the Sarasota area will join us, and I know you'll have a great time. My dear listeners, thank you for coming. I enjoyed having you with us. We've tried to be informative and inspiring. My upcoming guests will all be eclectic, exciting, and energizing, just like Frank was today. Now, my 80-year-old thought for the day: you know you're getting old when a recliner with a heating pad is your idea of a hot date. Signing. Thank you, Frank, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the 22nd. Signing off, your senior success lady. Thank you for entering the No Wine Zone. Please share our stories and our show with everyone you know. And remember, stop whining and then start smiling. And then if that doesn't work, you can start eating chocolate. Lots of chocolate. Take care and stay safe until we meet again.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a delight.
We want to thank you for listening to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. Always remember Ms. Jones' personal mantra: if you can think it, you can do it. That's what all of our guests have done with their lives, and so can you. You are the ultimate success coach in your own life. All you need to do will be to start sharing your own story with your family and friends. We hope that our guest stories will encourage you to explore an equation in your future that will combine your creativity plus connecting with others will enable you to be successful too. Always remember, your passion plus your purpose will equal prosperity as you explore the wonderful world of January Jones.